So you haven't actually let it go. You just don't know what to do about it. So you tell yourself, I accept that. And then you seethe. Welcome to Rowdy and Real with me, Sophie Shaw, therapist and slight loose cannon. Stick around for real talk, real growth, and some probable bad language. Let's dive in, shall we? Hello, my love, and here we are again at another season finale. It just comes around so quickly, I can hardly believe that we're here again. Amazing. So last year, the season finale was about 3 things to let go over the holidays, and I encourage you to go and have a listen to that because it says everything that I would want to say about how to survive the silly season intact. And letting go is sort of the theme of today's episode as well, or more accurately, acceptance. Now, acceptance is a funny old thing. I think all too often it's associated with resignation, with giving up. And that's why we resist it, because of course you're going to resist that because you don't want to give up. There's too much that's unfair or unjust, so you don't want to just lie down and quit. But acceptance is not giving up or quitting. It's something else entirely, something far more empowering and freeing. But before we get to that, we have to ask why? Why on earth would anyone choose to accept the unacceptable? Well, a multitude of reasons, but I would argue that the most powerful reason is freedom. Because living with something that you cannot accept is a burden, a heavy one. And acceptance is putting that down. Acceptance is for you. It's not about anyone or anything else. True self-development work is not necessarily about changing things, but accepting them. And that doesn't mean giving up or becoming resigned. And it doesn't mean that things can't change or that it's wrong to want things to change. But pushing hard against what you refuse to accept creates resistance and tension. It's exhausting, and it doesn't usually create change. So instead, true self-development means reaching for the most profound level of compassion and acceptance that you can, so that you can healthily create the change that you want, if it's possible. And if not, you can come to live peacefully with what can't be changed. And that's not a small task. Some things, most things actually, are outside of our control. It just is what it is. And acceptance is freedom from struggling with that. Now, one of the biggest stumbling blocks I see with my clients is the attempt to control what cannot be controlled. And then the distress caused by not being able to control things. And it's natural. You know, your survival instinct wants to protect you from pain and discomfort. So you try to control things. You try to keep everything in check so that you can feel more comfortable. And so maybe that means that you try to manage other people's behaviors, for example. Like you want them to behave in a certain way, like turn up on time or clean up after themselves or just understand how you feel or listen when you're talking. And, you tie yourself up in frustrated knots when they don't. And this causes so much anxiety. Now, anxiety is a symptom of not being able to control what's happening to you or around you or to people you care about. And when other people's behaviors are really acutely uncomfortable for you, what can you actually do? Can you do anything? Can you force people to change? Can you force them to behave differently? No. Can you insist that they do? Well, you can try, but it's only going to end up hurting you in the long run. So this topic always brings me back to the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, I quote this often to my clients because it tells us that we have a choice. And actually, that's the only thing over which we have any control, our choices. Acceptance, well, it's actually incredibly simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it is simple. It is just a choice. It's a decision. You decide, you choose to put down the fight and accept what is. Now, this might happen in an instant, all at once. You might have this moment of clarity that allows you to see things as they really are. And, with a great sigh of relief, you might choose to deeply and completely accept what is. Or it might be a process. It might take time, maybe even a long time. And either is fine. There's no one way or right way to go about this. Now, we've mostly been talking about acceptance of others or other situations outside of ourselves. But like all things, it starts with the self. If we can truly accept ourselves, then accepting others becomes much easier. It starts with the self and radiates outwards. In fact, I would argue that most intolerance of others is really a reflection of intolerance of ourselves. Or, to put it in simple pop psychology terms, you spot it, you got it. In other words, the faults that we repeatedly find with others are usually the faults that we find unacceptable about ourselves. Ugh, I know. Sorry. This is a tough one for most of us because where's the justice in that? They did that awful thing and they made you feel this way, right? Well, kind of. But this isn't really about justice. This is about freedom. A lot of so-called self-improvement is actually just self-rejection masquerading as acceptance. It's saying no to the parts of ourselves that we don't like, which makes us say no when we find that reflected in others. And it's driven by a refusal to love and accept yourself and others for who you and they truly are. That means light and shadow, good bits and bad bits, healthy and unhealthy. And too often it comes from wanting to run away from those parts of ourselves that we find too uncomfortable to live with, the parts that have made mistakes or got it wrong. Dun, dun, dun. So the psychologist Carl Rogers said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. That's clever, but it's tricky. Because it's a bit like saying, you'll find the love of your life when you stop looking. Well, how do you do that? How can you create the change you want without rejecting who you are right now? And I think that this is the real challenge for most of us, accepting the unacceptable about ourselves, forgiving ourselves for the shit that we've done or not done, for all that we are, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, loving ourselves anyway. And actually not just loving ourselves, but liking ourselves with genuine affection. That's the real work. That's what allows gentle, compassionate, healthy change to take place from a foundation of total self-acceptance. So how do we do this acceptance thing? And how can you tell if you've truly accepted something and let it go, or if you're just suppressing how you really feel about it? It's a thorny one, for sure. So let me give you some guidance. Let's pause for a second. If this is landing for you, make sure you hit subscribe or follow, because it means you'll always have a little dose of real talk waiting for you when you need it most. Now, if you've been struggling for a very long time to accept something difficult, then consider this. In her book Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach says that the work of acceptance is not in effort, but in opening. So in other words, you need to open your heart to the possibility of acceptance. You just need to open the door a chink. I believe that you don't try to accept something, you simply do it, or don't do it. Or you become willing to do it. So take, for example, the person who says, yeah, I'm going to try and quit smoking. Now, you know damn well that that person is definitely going to smoke again. In fact, they intend to smoke again. The I will try is a kind of get out of jail free card, because you can say, well, I tried. So we don't try to accept. We simply choose to do it right now. Or if that's too difficult, and I accept that that could be too difficult for a lot of people just all in one go, instead you can simply say, I am willing to accept this. It's a subtle change, but it makes all the difference. And you'd be amazed at how much freer and lighter your heart feels afterwards. Accept the unacceptable. And when you've done that, ask yourself, right, okay, what now? What comes next? And a whole world of possibility opens up. It's so freeing. It's beautiful. You know, so many times I've heard somebody say, well, he said this to me and I accept that. And then I think to myself, no, you don't. My friend, you do not accept that. And that's okay. You see, a lot of the time, what we think is acceptance is really just saying nothing, biting your tongue, while simultaneously stewing in resentment silently. See, you haven't actually let it go. You just don't know what to do about it. So you tell yourself, I accept that. And then you seethe. Whereas true acceptance leads to true letting go. And it looks a little bit different. When you truly accept something, you can hear about it or talk about it without feeling emotionally derailed. So you can think about the person or the thing or the situation, whatever it is, and you can keep your peace of mind. In fact, you don't even need to think about it all that much. It just isn't so much of a concern, and it passes out of your awareness. You let it go for real, and it feels so good. So does this resonate with you? Are you a stewer, or are you a true let it go kind of person? And no judgment here, because full confession, I'm a stewer. If it makes you feel any better, I have to work hard at this because I don't find it easy, even now. And it's important to remember that this is quite a bit harder for neurodivergent folks. So, if that's you, give yourself a massive break if acceptance is a struggle for you. In fact, that's the first thing that you can accept, that this might be difficult. Because if you can accept that wholeheartedly, then guess what happens? It gets easier. Oh, look at that. So here are my top tips for letting things go. The first is just journal that shit out. All that stewing, all that resentment, all those immature, childish, bitchy things you're not allowed to think or feel or say. Just get them out onto the page, and then shred it, burn it, rip it up. I talked about this in the last episode. There's no such thing as bad energy, so check that out because there's a bit more detail there. The point is, you need a non-judgmental outlet of expression. Everything you want to say is allowed. And this is one of my favorite ways to truly let things go. Another way is to dance it out, walk it out, move it out. Resentment gets stuck in the body. So does anxiety. So does any other unwanted, negative, or strong emotion, by the way. And moving freely, especially to music, is one of the best ways to disperse and dispel that energy. Shake your tail feather, my love. Move your horse. And then finally, just feel it. We invest so much energy in being okay that we forget to just feel our emotions. So instead of being felt and released like a big fart, they get stuck with you and they stay with you for so much longer than they need to. Let it flow. Let it go. Better out than in. And actually, I have a really powerful healing meditation on my website exactly for this. It's called Release Negative Emotions, and it's a huge help. It's the exact same process that I take my clients through. Feel it, allow it, let it move, let it go. It's probably my favorite method of all. And, I'm sure you can think of other ways too. You might draw or paint or talk it out with a friend or coach or counselor. In fact, getting support with this is a really good idea, especially if you're wrestling with accepting something difficult. But just do whatever you need to do to express the feelings you have about what has been unacceptable. And remember, this process is for you. It's not about them or anyone else. The point is, other people are going to piss you off sometimes. You'll piss yourself off sometimes. What are you going to do? This is life. You can't control them. And, there's not a huge amount you can control about yourself. So you have a choice. Are you going to turn yourself inside out, trying to make other people change their behavior so that you can feel better? Are you going to torture yourself trying to be something that you're not and never could be and don't need to be anyway? Or are you going to accept, deeply and truly accept, that some things are out of your hands? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Accepting things for how they really are, rather than how you'd like them to be, frees up so much energy. And that energy could be put to really good use, depending on the situation. You might step out of the struggle and accept someone for who they truly are. Stop expecting them to behave differently. Stop torturing yourself when they don't. And from that place of acceptance, you then get to choose whether to continue in that relationship or to finally leave it behind. You might find a different way to change things from a new, more accepting perspective. You can choose to rise above, or you could choose to fight your corner. You can choose to redraw boundaries. You can choose to leave toxic situations behind you and move forward. You can choose to forgive. You can choose to accept someone exactly as they are and start appreciating all their good bits. And you can choose to do the exact same thing for yourself. Looking in the mirror and instead of focusing on the bits you don't like, thinking, not bloody bad, actually. You could choose to have a long bath, go for a walk, write out all your angry thoughts and then burn them. You can choose. Doesn't it feel better to know that? So, tell me, how easy or difficult do you find it to let things go, truly let them go? What do you do to accept and let things go? Let me know, please. I always love to hear your guidance. And this is a big topic, and it's not a particularly easy one. So, as ever, please be patient with yourself. You don't need to find acceptance today or even next week. But perhaps you could start to say, I'm willing. Okay, my friend, big love, happy holidays, and see you soon. Ta-ra! Thanks for listening to Rowdy and Real with me, Sophie Shaw. If you'd like to stay in touch, then please visit norwichtherapy.co.uk and join the mailing list to receive a gorgeous free meditation straight into your inbox. And if you'd like to chat with me about your stuff, then please book yourself a free 30-minute call at sophieshaw.as.me/free call, and we'll start making a plan for your happiness. This podcast is intended for educational and vaguely entertaining purposes and is not a replacement for counselling, psychotherapy or coaching. Please take responsibility for your mental health and ask for the help you need. You're fabulous and you deserve to be happy. Bye!